We are assuming in our 2018 proposal that a DACA deal is done and that the border wall is funded.
Infrastructure overhaul. President Trump revealing his long-awaited roadmap to rebuilding today. We'll break down exactly what is in his $1.5 trillion plan.
And remember when actor Robert De Niro had these choice words for President Trump?
I'd like to punch him in the face. This is somebody that we want for president? I don't think so.
Well, the actor's newest attack just launched at the president. Fox and Friends First continues right now.
I'm on top of the world, I'm on top of the world, waiting on this for a while now, paying my dues to the dirt. I've been waiting to smile, the whole day for a while,
Well, I'll tell you what, we're back down on the ground now, but we were on top of the world on Friday, right, Rob?
Don't like it.
We were skydiving.
That's right.
And we will have that story for you at some point here in the upcoming days or weeks on Fox and Friends First. We will let you know when to stay tuned for that.
That's right. You'll get a kick out of it.
Yes, you will.
Absolutely.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. I'm Jillian Mealy.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. Thanks for starting your day with us today. Straight to our top story this morning. President Trump expected to unveil a massive $1.5 trillion infrastructure plan today and lay out a roadmap for the 2019 budget.
That's right. Griff Jenkins joins us live in Washington, D.C. with what we can expect. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Jillian and Rob. Yeah, it's a plan to aggressively rebuild what the president calls America's crumbling infrastructure of highways, bridges, railroads, airports, and waterways. And later today, he's meeting with several state and local officials who will share the burden on paying for it. It's aiming to fix what the White House calls a broken system of funding for infrastructures. Here are the four goals of the plan. First, it wants to stimulate $1.5 trillion in new investment. It wants to shorten the permit process to 2 years under one authority. It wants to invest in rural infrastructure. And fourth, to improve the workforce training, in previewing the new 2019 budget. OMB Director Mick Mulvaney says that it'll focus on things like this new infrastructure plan.
Take the money that the Democrats want to put to these social programs and move it to things like infrastructure, move it to things like opioid relief, move it to things that are in line with the president's priorities, so that if it does get spent, at least it gets spent in the right places.
The White House says this infrastructure plan is bipartisan and addresses the objectives of both Republicans and Democrats, but initial reaction from Democrat members like Pete DeFazio suggests otherwise.
It would cut existing transportation programs to pay for Wall Street and foreign investors to toll our roads, and it would gut bedrock environmental clean water and clean air protections under the guise of speeding up projects. This is not a real infrastructure plan. It's simply another scam.
Now, the White House says the plan calls for $200 billion in new federal funding, 100 of which will be spent on incentives for state and local governments. It will be interesting, guys, to see how it's received on Capitol Hill today.
Certainly will, Griff. All right, thank you so much, and happy Monday to you. All right, a Fox News alert, and hundreds of rescuers are battling the elements right now, combing through the wreckage of that Russian commercial jet crash that killed 71 people. New surveillance video shows the moment that Russian plane plunged into a field. It killed everybody on board. Saratov Airlines, that's Flight 703, seen off in the distance there, exploding into a fireball shortly after takeoff from an airport in Moscow. The company says the aircraft made several trips that same day with no apparent issues. Investigators searching for a cause, said to be looking into both weather and human error as factors.
Tensions flaring in the Middle East, Israel and Syria one step closer to war. The Jerusalem Post reporting Israel has deployed an anti-missile system to the Syrian border, including this Iron Dome battery designed to shoot down rockets. Now, this comes after a weekend full of conflict, which started when an Israeli helicopter took out an Iranian drone launched from Syria. An Israeli fighter jet was then shot down, sparking a massive air attack on several Syrian and Iranian targets in Syria.
Prosecutors want the death penalty for the man accused of killing 2 Ohio police officers if he survives. 30-year-old Quentin Smith faces 2 aggravated murder charges while in the hospital. He was last listed in critical condition after being shot by police. Westerville officers Anthony Morelli and Eric Joring ambushed by gunfire when they showed up to Smith's home responding to a 911 hang-up call.
911, what's your emergency?
Please help, please help, please help.
What's wrong? Tell me what's going on.
He shot the police officers.
Your husband did it? Where's your husband now?
Records show Smith wasn't even allowed to own a gun and had numerous run-ins with police. The community coming together to remember the fallen heroes with a prayer vigil that happened overnight. Officer Morelli's cruiser turned into a memorial sitting outside City Hall. Nearby police departments are volunteering to patrol the streets of this town while officers mourn that loss.
Democrats now say they're prepared to black out parts of their memo about the FBI's Russia investigation so it can be released to the public without spilling government secrets. Let's get right to Todd Pyro live in the studio for the latest on the political tug of war. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning to you, Jillian. Seems like we are closer than ever to seeing what is inside the Democrats' classified memo, rebutting the Republican surveillance memo, with a senior White House official hinting it could soon see the light of day if Justice Department concerns are addressed. All this after White House Legislative Director Mark Short accused the top Democrat on the House Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, of intentionally sabotaging the release of the Dem memo by including sources and methods he knew would have to be redacted, setting up a situation where, if the White House redacted it, Short said there would have been an outcry that President Trump was trying to edit it.
We're not afraid of transparency. I think you're going to see us release the memo, Chuck. What the president said is that we believe that Congressman Schiff intentionally put in there methods and sources that he knew would need to be redacted. Democrats in the House only voted to release their memo. They voted against the Republican memo. There is a hypocrisy here, Chuck. We will be releasing that memo. We've asked them to clean it up.
So now Schiff says he plans to meet with the FBI to go through their concerns and redact sensitive material. Nevertheless, he continues to battle the president.
The president doesn't want the public to see the underlying facts. What is revealed in our memo are quotations from the very FISA application that really demonstrate just how misleading the Republicans have been. But the president doesn't want you to see these facts from the FISA application because it completely undermines his claim of vindication.
House Intel Committee Chair Devin Nunes, the author of the Republican surveillance memo at the center of all this, says he actually wants the Democrat memo to be released, calling the Dem doc, quote, ridiculous on the face of it. Jillian, Rob, back to you.
We're going to analyze this much more here in about 5 minutes. Todd.
Thank you, Todd. New overnight, the United States dominates the slopes at the Winter Olympics. Jamie Anderson earning a gold medal in the women's snowboarding slopestyle.
Anderson celebrating the win, wrapping herself in an American flag. Look at that. She also won gold in the same event at the Sochi Games back in 2014 in Russia. 17-year-old Red Gerard won gold for the U.S. in the men's slopestyle on Saturday.
There were also two firsts for Team USA. Chris Masder becoming the first American to medal in singles luge, earning a silver.
The luge. And figure skater Mirai Nagasu becoming the first American woman to land a triple axel in Olympic competition. That is not easy.
Oh my gosh.
Helping the U.S. to a bronze in team free skating. That happened overnight.
So impressive, isn't it? Team USA currently sits third in the medal count with 4 total, 2 of them gold. Germany leads with 3 golds.
All right. All right, Brad Keselowski taking the checkered flag in the first NASCAR race of the season.
Brad Keselowski, from last to first, wins the Clash at Daytona.
Wow, last to first. The veteran driver leading Team Penske to a sweep of the top 2 finishers, earning the win, the Clash at Daytona.
Ryan Blaney finished second. The exhibition race setting the stage for the Daytona 500 this Sunday, the first official race of the season. Congrats to all.
Yes, a lot of winners this morning.
I know.
Gotta love that on a Monday.
Besides us, it's fine. We're not concerned at all. Good morning to you. It is 8 minutes after the hour. The media smitten over Kim Jong-un's sister at the Olympics, glamorizing a dictatorship. The reality of what that regime is capable of next.
Critics quick to pounce on President Trump for not immediately releasing the Democrats' rebuttal memo.
Donald Trump was quick to release and promote his chief House Republican consigliere, Devin Nunes' Russia memo.
Democrats write a memo. Nope. No transparency.
All right, who's really playing politics with national security? Our political panel on deck to debate this from both sides, coming up next.
Somebody got that much determination, I'd be willing to help them. Wanted to lend somebody a helping hand.
A single father walking 11 miles to work every day gets the gift of a lifetime. Make sure you stay tuned for this one.
'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah.
Good morning and welcome back. The media under fire for making Kim Jong-un's sister a shining star at the Olympics. The Washington Post running a headline calling her the Ivanka Trump of North Korea, but CNN bearing the brunt for saying she was stealing the show. The article provoking fierce and immediate outrage, focusing on the documented brutality of the North Korean regime. Active duty U.S. Army officer Jeremy Hunt joined us earlier, calling the normalization of such a brutal regime shameful journalism.
Our response to what's going on in North Korea, our hearts should be broken. What we're seeing here is that the American media has betrayed the trust of the American people. And really now the ball is in their court to see, are they going to actually walk back any of these stories? Will we see any apologies for some of the headlines that have taken place over this past weekend?
So to put North Korea's human rights violations in perspective, nearly 10.5 million people in the rogue nation are believed to be undernourished, and an estimated 120,000 people imprisoned in political prison camps. President Trump rehashing his war on fake news.
Truly dishonest people in the media.
The mainstream fake media, because they are fake and phony.
That was just fake news.
Our commander-in-chief tweeting, quote, so many positive things going on for the USA, and the fake news media just doesn't want to go there. Same negative stories over and over again. No wonder the people no longer trust the media, whose approval ratings are correctly at their lowest levels in history. Hashtag Make America Great Again. Rob.
All right, Democrats and the media blasting President Trump over his decision to delay releasing the Democrats' FISA rebuttal memo.
Donald Trump was quick to release and promote his chief House Republican consigliere, Devin Nunes's Russia memo.
Democrats write a memo. Nope. No transparency.
All right, so was this the trap that Congressman Trey Gowdy and a couple other people had predicted that the Democrats would lay for the president? Here to weigh in on this, our panel, former Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson and Democratic strategist Mustafa Tamiz. Guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning. Mustafa, I want to start with you. Some Republicans say that this was a trap that was well laid by Adam Schiff. What do you think?
Look, I mean, Trey Gowdy himself said that the memo, the Republican memo that was released, said nothing about exonerating the president, and the president's running around saying that exonerated him. The Democratic memo lays out the inaccuracies, the false information that was put out by the Republican memo. This was voted in the Intelligence Committee both by Democrats and Republicans. And now that the president has it for the first time in his life, he's concerned about the national intelligence. If he's so concerned about intelligence, he should read his daily brief rather than hold this memo back.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, there were concerns from the FBI about the Republican memo as well, although, Katrina, when we read that memo, it was hard to see why there was any national security concern in that memo. It didn't seem to really expose anything too important, in my opinion.
Well, it wasn't, and it was supposed to be doomsday if the Republican memo got out. They were saying that it exposed sources and methods, which we know now that it did not. But this is typical. This is the Democrats playing politics with national security. And you don't have to go back very far to watch Adam Schiff on Russia TV explain his own concerns that he had with government surveillance, even suggesting that they should declassify judges' opinions on these matters to get a better understanding of why they're spying on people to begin with. But suddenly, now that it's President Trump, it's no big deal, and he wants to help cover this up. It's just simply not going to work. Republicans voted unanimously to put out that memo. It's going to come out, and of course, they stacked it with things that they knew were going to have to be redacted. Adam Schiff asked for a letter from the FBI and the DOJ if there were to be any redactions, and they sent him exactly what he asked for.
Sure. And Mustafa, over to you. You know what? We've had this situation with Adam Schiff has now come out, and he's doing a lot of talking in the media about his memo. Both of these memos, the Republican and the Democratic rebuttal, are very political. We have this other memo, though, this Grassley-Graham memo. And Schiff kind of got caught in a lie over the weekend, basically saying that Chuck Grassley was trying to put a stain on the Bob Mueller investigation by releasing a memo that backs up, in some respects, what was in the Nunes memo. It also criticizes some of the things in the Nunes memo as well. But Schiff says he's trying to put a cloud over the Mueller investigation, and Grassley says that he's not, that that's not his intention at all, and that he wants that investigation to continue unfettered.
Look, this whole memo gate has been started by the Republicans. They continue to put information out and mislead the American public. All Adam Schiff is trying to do is correct the record and put information out that both Democrats and Republicans voted for, and the president should release it. Now, putting that aside, the president should also enact the sanctions that both houses of Congress overwhelmingly passed against Russia. But the president refuses. He refuses to enact the sanctions that both houses, over a majority of both houses, have passed. So when Katrina talks about Russia, we need to ask why the president is so concerned about him looking bad politically and not protecting our national interests, not protecting our elections, when a foreign power like Russia is intervening in our elections.
Well, I just want to correct the record real quick.
Yeah.
Barack Obama was in charge when the said interference from Russia was occurring.
You keep going back to Barack Obama. The president of the United States is Donald Trump, and he is not putting the sanctions that he should have put. Both houses of Congress overwhelmingly voted for. Why don't you focus on the president that we have in the White House today?
Let's talk about
because that's what we need to do.
Memogate came from the Russia hoax, which was started by the Democrats, and that's why we're having this discussion.
It was passed only by the Republicans, and it was put out by the president without considering national security. That's the issue that we should be dealing with.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get a revised memo on this sometime here in the next day or two, I would assume, and we'll see what changes if the president decides to release that, if that changes any opinion on the matter. Guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
It is 19 minutes after the hour. Power plant explosion, a brand new effort to get electricity. The massive blackout that just hit Puerto Rico, once again in the dark.
Denied service. A police officer shocked after he says a McDonald's employee refused to serve him. Carly Shimkus here with the backlash that's growing online. Hi, Carly.
Well, excuse me, the liberal media, I'm just choked up over this, fawning over Kim Jong-un's sister at the Olympics, with some even calling her the North Korean Ivanka.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in shook the hand of Kim Yo-jong.
South Korea's president sharing with her this historic handshake.
This groundbreaking moment, Kim Jong-un extending an invitation presented by his sister to South Korean President Moon Jae-in.
Well, there was a lot more, even more overt displays of affection for the North Koreans from a lot of the media. It was pretty ridiculous over the weekend. The internet and regular people, regular Americans, not as impressed. And Carly's here to tell us about that.
Yeah, you're right. And good morning, guys. A day after CNN was criticized for its glowing review of Kim Jong-un's sister, the New York Times has come out with an article of their own. They posted this to Twitter saying, without a word, only flashing smiles, Kim Jong-un's sister outflanked Vice President Mike Pence in diplomacy. Now, the article goes on to say that Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, was a good ambassador for her country, while at the same time the article criticizes Vice President Mike Pence. Reaction to this on social media was swift. Colorado Senator Cory Gardner took to Twitter saying, reminder, there are currently over 100,000 prisoners enslaved in North Korea. Buck Sexton, a former CIA agent, said the New York Times believes that Mike Pence, our vice president, and the psychopathic North Korean crime family that starves, mutilates, and murders millions of its people over generations are, you know, basically on the same level. One person who probably likes this article, guys, Kim Jong-un himself, and he could use these towards his propaganda campaign, of course.
So Robert De Niro thinks we're all insane?
Yeah, you know, Robert De Niro has criticized the president many times. Do you guys remember this moment?
I'd like to punch him in the face. This is somebody that we want for president? I don't think so.
All right, well, he is back at it again. He said this during a recent summit in Dubai talking about climate change. He says, I'm talking about my own country, the United States of America. We don't like to say we are a backward country, so let's just say we are suffering from a case of temporary insanity. So should he be talking about climate change? A lot of people on social media all saying the same thing, pointing out that he, jet sets around the country. So maybe a little bit of a double standard there.
I was reading the rest of the tweet there. All right, let's talk about.
I'm so glad you're captivated.
Yeah, I'm always captivated by this segment.
That's the whole point of this.
And let's talk about McDonald's.
All right, well, this is kind of a tough one.
Yeah.
So a police officer in Florida says he was refused service at a McDonald's. We've heard these stories before because of his profession. His name is Tim Lancaster. He says, I have been working in law enforcement for over 20 years and never thought I would personally experience what just occurred at the drive-thru. I will never eat at McDonald's again. Never been treated like that before. Well, a spokesperson for McDonald's says we have respect for all first responders and are investigating the behavior described in this Facebook post as unacceptable and not tolerated in our restaurants. So they are investigating. Usually when they investigate these kind of things, doesn't work out too well for the employee. If this is, actually true.
You hate to see that.
Not a corporate mentality, just one employee, but
That's
nevertheless.
right. Absolutely.
Thanks,
Carly, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, 26 minutes after the hour, President Trump again delivering on a big campaign promise.
We will rebuild our military and alliances, destroy terrorists.
The Pentagon now getting its biggest budget ever, $700 billion. Our next guest breaks down what it means for our defense and explains who the biggest winners are.
I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man. So you can tell everybody. Yeah, you can tell everybody.
We are back with a Fox News alert. Hundreds of rescuers battling the elements overnight, scouring a plane crash scene in Russia for any clues.
That's right. The jet plunged into a field, killing all 71 people on board. Kelly Wright joins us live with brand new information in the investigation. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Chief. Well, just take a look over my shoulder there. You can see what's happening live there. But when the Saratov Airlines flight 6W703 took off from Moscow's Domodedovo airport, there was no indication of anything being wrong. Everything appeared to be normal, in fact. But just minutes after takeoff, the flight fell from radar, indicating that plane, its crews and passengers were in serious trouble. A distant surveillance camera shows the plane, and this is very graphic to look at, plunging into a snowy field, bursting into a ball of fire. Rescue crews quickly rushed to the site of the crash, but no survivors were found. All 71 people aboard the flight perished in that crash. Some residents from nearby villages reported hearing a loud explosion, a boom that rattled homes and even blew out windows. Recovery crews working through the night had the grim task of recovering bodies. Earlier, one of the plane's black boxes was found. Saratov Airlines told TASS Russian news agency the plane had made several trips the day of the crash, and everything appeared to be normal, telling TASS this: before each of those flights, the plane was checked. The last two technicians who serviced the plane were flying on board the aircraft at the time of the crash. The final check before the fatal flight did not reveal any deviations on the aircraft at all. Flight 6W703 was traveling to Orsk, where relatives of passengers had been waiting and were told about the tragic news of the ill-fated flight that killed their loved ones. Upon hearing the sad news, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said this: it is deeply saddened, the United States is deeply saddened by the tragic deaths of those on board Saratov Airlines Flight 703. We send our condolences to the families of those who lost their lives and to the people of Russia. The cause of the crash, by the way, remains under investigation. They will continue to until they find out. Back to you.
Yeah, that certainly will. Kelly, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The former Indianapolis Colts linebacker who was killed by an illegal immigrant will be laid to rest today. Funeral services for Edwin Jackson will be held in his hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. The 26-year-old and his Uber driver were killed in Indiana after being hit by an illegal immigrant who was drunk, 3 times over the legal limit, in fact. Manuel Orrego Zavala has been deported from the U.S. twice before and does not have a driver's license. His blood alcohol level was, as I said, about 3 times the legal limit.
A major setback for recovery efforts in Puerto Rico as a fiery explosion plunges part of the island nation into darkness. A malfunctioning switch at a power plant in San Juan sparking this massive fire. Photos on social media showing damage to the equipment. Crews say it's unclear how many people are without power, but they hope it will be fully restored by later today. The blackout comes as over 400,000 people in other parts of the island are still without power. That's more than 5 months after Hurricane Maria.
President Trump keeping a big campaign promise as the new White House budget includes a record $700 billion in defense spending for the Pentagon.
The reality is that the president wanted to defend the nation. The president's first priority, he said this during the campaign, he said this since he was elected, he said it the other night at the State of the Union, was to defend the nation.
So what does this mean for our military? Retired U.S. Navy Commander Kirk Lippold is here to weigh in. Thank you for joining us this morning. I guess I'll just start with, is $700 billion enough?
Good morning, and thanks for having me on. And quite frankly, it's not. When you look at that number, while large in and of itself, the reality is it is not nearly enough for what the military needs after almost a decade of declining funds. They started out in, as you look at it, as a percentage of the gross domestic product. In 2010, it was 4.5%. Today, it's down to just 3.1% with this plus up. So quite frankly, it's just a start. And while the number may seem big, in actuality, it's not, and we need a lot more to do what's necessary.
Well, I remember the Obama speeches when he would talk about how we would spend, 10 or 20 times the amount that, other countries do on military, that we would spend more than the other 9 nations in the top 10 combined, or some numbers like that, just really showing what he thought was a bloated budget. How much did he pull us back in his 8 years in office?
Well, when you look at what he did, he essentially undermined across the military the ability to man, train, and equip the forces in a manner that would allow us to be able to address long-term threats. Those threats are now becoming real. We can see the shift as we've gone from a strategy focused on terrorism for a number of years, now to a strategy where we once again have to deal with the peer, near-peer competitors in China and Russia, while at the same time dealing with countries like Iran, North Korea, and, of course, the terrorist threat.
If it were up to you, how do you allocate this money now?
I think you allocate it based upon what the real needs are. You need these admirals and generals to come down and say, look, you've got a national security strategy that has this much that we need to do. We're only given this much. The piece right here is called risk. What they need to do is address to the American people and make sure that the Congress understands what that risk is, how big it is for each of the services, and what they need in order to make sure we fulfill all the requirements in the national security and national defense strategies.
For people that are, obsessed with the deficit, we're just terribly in debt at this point. We've been fighting a war in Afghanistan for 17 years now. What do you do about a situation like that where there's no end in sight to a war that's costing us billions of dollars? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think you're seeing a real good start in President Trump, who is looking at a country who has given safe haven to the Taliban and the Haqqani network by saying, Pakistan, you're not getting any more military support. And we are going to start redoing the strikes in there that we had before to cut off your networks, to cut off the funding, to cut off the training bases. Because the reality is we cannot stabilize and help Afghanistan grow so that it can become a stable nation in what is essentially that arc of stability running from China through Pakistan, Afghanistan, and over to Iran. We need that country there. We need to stay engaged there. But by the same token, we also need to make sure we're looking at the longer-term stability that we have against China in the South China Sea and what they're doing there, taking over the islands and militarizing them. By the same token, when you look at the footprint that Russia is doing in Syria right now, they're not there just to defeat ISIS. They're there to grow a military force to be an influence throughout the Middle East that the United States needs to make sure that we understand and counter properly.
Interesting stuff, yeah.
Commander Lippold, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we sure felt some wicked weather on the East Coast yesterday. I know you were flying home and you felt it in the air.
Yeah, had a bumpy landing last night, Janice, and then I woke up this morning. It felt like a summer morning out there.
Right? Isn't that nice? It's 50 right here. Well, it was 50 in New York City. We bumped down those temperatures because we do have a front moving through. But it's warmer in New York than it is in Corpus Christi this morning. It's going to feel like springtime along the East Coast. Going to bring those temperatures down a little bit tomorrow, but then way back up as we head into Wednesday and Thursday. So past 12 hours, we had a lot of rain here in the Northeast. That front is going to move on through in the next 6 to 12 hours. Then we watch our future radar. Our next storm system moves into portions of the Northwest and the Rockies, and even Southern California is going to get a little bit of moisture with this. Next 5 to 7 days, a lot of rain again for the eastern third of the country, mainly rain. It's going to be too warm for snow, but we have a lot of snow across the northern Rockies, central Rockies, and towards the northern plains. Forecast highs for Monday. Okay, 47 in New York. So we drop the temperatures a little bit in New York City, but watch what happens as we get into Wednesday, 50, and Thursday, 60 degrees.
Whoa!
Woohoo! I can't promise it's going to stay 60 degrees, but we will celebrate on Thursday.
Yes, we will.
Yes.
What did the groundhog see? Did the groundhog say
winter?
More winter?
It
More
always
winter.
sees winter.
There is a little more winter behind this, but we will take the one day of 60 degrees.
Yes, we will.
Yes, we will.
I've never trusted a groundhog.
But I trust Janice.
Not a single one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Janice, thanks so much.
You got it.
All right, 39 minutes after the hour, an al-Qaeda terrorist living quite well at Guantanamo Bay, binge-eating Oreo cookies, watching sitcoms, and why he could be just days away from freedom thanks to former President Obama.
Democrats pulling out all the stops, hoping to flip the House and Senate in 2018. But our next guest, a GOP strategist, says hold the brakes, not so fast. Why several big White House wins should have liberals in Washington worried.
All right, thousands of fast food employees protesting nationwide today, pushing for $15 an hour minimum wage. Workers also rallying for union rights as well. The protest coming on the 50th anniversary of the historic Memphis sanitation strike. Fast food employees vowing to carry on the fight for the African-American men who protested for good union jobs. The maker of prescription painkiller OxyContin caving to pressure, now deciding to no longer market its drug to doctors. Purdue Pharma making this surprising announcement amid criticism that the company played a major role in the country's opioid crisis. Dr. Mark Siegel joined us earlier, offering some insight into how this so-called epidemic really did spiral out of control.
Plying us and saying, look, don't worry about it, no side effects will cure the problem. That's false advertising, and that's why they're under the gun.
Opioids have been blamed for more than 42,000 overdose deaths just in 2016.
Democrats are heading into the 2018 midterms ready to take back power on the Hill. But the new numbers are in, and it's no longer looking like a sure thing for the left. Here to help us break it down is GOP strategist Jen Kearns. Jen, thank you for joining us this morning.
Great.
So let's go ahead and take a look at some of those numbers, because the gap is certainly inching closer and closer. We're looking at right now an average here of the latest midterm polls, and you can see 45.1% for the Democrats versus 38.4% for the Republicans. Should the Democrats be worried?
I think they should be. It's interesting. Pundits nearly everywhere have been predicting that the Democrats will likely win the 2018 midterm elections, and for good reason. Historically, it's usually the opposition party to the White House that ends up